She was often used in the phaeton, and was very much liked by some of the ladies because she was so gentle. And some time after this she was sold to two ladies who drove themselves and wanted a good, safe horse. I met her several times out in the country, going a good steady pace, and looking as gay and contented as a horse could be. I was very glad to see her, for she deserved a good place. After she left us, another horse came in her stead. He was young, and had a bad name for shying and starting, by which he had lost a good place. I asked him what made him shy. "Well, I hardly know," he said. "I was timid when I was young, and was a good deal frightened several times. And if I saw anything strange, I used to turn and look at it. You see, with our blinkers, one can't see or understand what a thing is unless one looks round. And then my master always gave me a whipping, which of course made me start on, and did not make me less afraid. I think if he would have let me just look at things quietly, and see that there was nothing to hurt me, it would have been all right, and I should have gotten used to them." One day an old gentleman was riding with him, and a large piece of white paper rag blew across just on one side of me. I shied and started forward. My master, as usual, whipped me smartly, but the old man cried out, "You're wrong! You're wrong! You should never whip a horse for shying. He shies because he's frightened, and you only frighten him more and make a bad habit worse." So I suppose all men don't do so. I'm sure I don't want to shy for the sake of it, but how should one know what is dangerous and what is not, if one is never allowed to get used to anything? I am never afraid of what I know. Now, I was brought up in a park where there were deer. Of course I knew them as well as I did a sheep or a cow, but they're not common. And I know many sensible horses who are frightened at them, and who kick up quite a shindy before they will pass a paddock where there are deer. I knew what my companion said was true, and I wished that every young horse had as good a master as Farmer Gray and Squire Gordon. Of course, we sometimes came in for good driving here. I remember one morning I was put into the light gig and taken to the house in Pulteney Street. Two gentlemen came out. The taller of them came round to my head. He looked at the bit and bridle, and just shifted the collar with his hand to see if it fitted comfortably. "Do you consider this horse wants a curb?" he said to the hostler. "Well," said the man, "I should say he would go just as well without. He has an uncommon good mouth, and though he has a fine spirit, he has no vice. But we generally find people like the curb." "I don't like it," said the gentleman. "Be so good as to take it off, and put the rein in the cheek. An easy mouth is a great thing on a long journey, is it not, old fellow?" he said, patting my neck. Then he took the reins, and they both got up. I can remember how quietly he turned me round, and then, with a light feel of the rein, and drawing the whip gently across my back, we were off. I arched my neck and set off at my best pace. I found I had someone behind me who knew how a good horse should be driven. It seemed like old times again, and made me feel quite gay. This gentleman took a great liking to me, and after trying me several times with the saddle, he prevailed upon my master to sell me to a friend of his who wanted a safe, pleasant horse for riding. And so it came to pass that in the summer I was sold to Mr. Barry. My new master was an unmarried man. He lived at Bath, and was engaged in business. His doctor advised him to take horse exercise, and for this purpose he bought me. He hired a stable a short distance from his lodgings, and engaged a man named Filcher as groom. My master knew very little about horses, but he treated me well, and I should have had a good easy place but for the circumstances of which he was ignorant. He ordered the best of hay, with plenty of oats, crushed beans, and bran, with vetches and dry grass, as a man might think needful. I heard the master give the order, so I knew there was plenty of good food, and I thought I was well off. For a few days all went well. I found that my groom understood his business. He kept the stable clean and airy. He groomed me thoroughly. He was never otherwise than gentle. He'd been a hostler in one of the great hotels in Bath. He'd given that up, and now cultivated fruit and vegetables for the market, and his wife bred and fattened poultry and rabbits for sale. After a while, it seemed to me that my oats came very short. I had the beans, but the bran was mixed with them instead of oats, of which there were very few. Certainly not more than a quarter of what there should have been. In 2 or 3 weeks, this began to tell on my strength and spirits. The grass food, though very good, was not the thing to keep up my condition without corn. However, I could not complain or make known my wants. So it went on for about 2 months, and I wondered my master did not see that something was the matter. However, one afternoon he rode out into the country to see a friend of his, a gentleman farmer, who lived on the road to Wells. This gentleman had a very quick eye for horses, and after he had welcomed his friend, he said, casting his eye over me, "It seems to me, Barry, that your horse does not look so well as he did when you first had him. Has he been well?" "Yes, I believe so," said my master. "But he is not nearly so lively as he was. My groom tells me that horses are always dull and weak in the autumn, and that I must expect it." "Autumn? Fiddlesticks," said the farmer. "Why, this is only August. And with your light work and good food, you ought not to go down like this, even if it were autumn." "How do you feed him?" My master told him. The other shook his head slowly and began to feel me over. "I can't say who eats your corn, my dear fellow, but I am much mistaken if your horse gets it." "Have you ridden very fast?" "No, very gently." "Then put your hand here," he said, passing his hand over my neck and shoulder. "He's as warm and damp as a horse just come from the grass. I advise you to look into your stable a little more. I hate to be suspicious, and thank heaven I have no cause to be, for I can trust my men, present or absent. But there are mean scoundrels, wicked enough to rob a dumb beast of his food. You must look into it." And turning to his man who had come to take me, "Give this horse a right good feed of bruised oats, and don't stint him." "Ah, dumb beast, yes, we are. But I could have spoken. I could have told my master where his oats went to. My groom used to come every morning about 6 o'clock, with him a little boy, who always had a covered basket with him. He used to go with his father into the harness room where the corn was kept, and I could see them, when the door stood ajar, fill a little bag with oats out of the bin, and then he used to be off. 5 or 6 mornings after this, just as the boy had left the stable, the door was pushed open, and a policeman walked in. Holding the child tight by the arm, another policeman followed and locked the door on the inside, saying, "Show me the place where your father keeps his rabbit's food." The boy looked very frightened and began to cry, but there was no escape, and he led them to the corn bin. Here the policeman found another empty bag like that which was found full of oats in the boy's basket. Filcher was cleaning my feet at the time, but they soon saw him, and though he blustered up a good deal, they walked him off to the lock-up, and his boy with him. I heard afterwards that the boy was not held to be guilty, but the man was sentenced to prison for 2 months. My master was not immediately suited, but in a few days my new groom came. He was tall, and a good-looking fellow enough. But if ever there was a humbug in the shape of a groom, Alfred Smirk was the man. He was very civil to me and never used me ill. In fact, he did a great deal of stroking and patting when his master was there to see it. He always brushed my mane and tail with water, and my hoofs with oil before he brought me to the door, to make me look smart. But as to cleaning my feet and looking to my shoes or grooming me thoroughly, he thought no more of that than if I had been a cow. He left my bit rusty, my saddle damp, and my crupper stiff. Alfred Smirk considered himself very handsome, He spent a great deal of time about his hair, whiskers, and necktie before a little looking-glass in the harness room. When his master was speaking to him, it was always, "Yes, sir, yes, sir," touching his hat at every word, and everyone thought he was a very nice young man, and that Mr. Barry was very fortunate to meet him. I should say he was the laziest, most conceited fellow I ever came near. Of course, it was a great thing not to be ill-used, but then a horse wants more than that. I had a loose box, and might have been very comfortable if he had not been too indolent to clean it out. He never took all the straw away, and the smell from what lay underneath was very bad, while the strong vapors rose up, made my eyes smart and inflame, and I did not feel the appetite for my food. One day his master came in and said, "Alfred, this stable smells rather strong. Should you not give that stall a good scrub and throw down plenty of water?" "Well, sir," he said, touching his cap, "I'll do it if you so please, but it's rather dangerous, sir, throwing water down on a horse's box. They're apt to take cold, sir. I should not like to do him an injury, but I'll do it if you please, sir." "Well," said the master, "I should not like him to take cold, but I don't like the smell of this stable. Do you think the drains are all right?" "Well, sir, now you mention it, I think the drain does sometimes send back a smell. There may be something wrong, sir." "Then send for the bricklayer and have it seen to," said his master. "Yes, sir, I will." The bricklayer came and pulled up a great many bricks and found nothing amiss. So he put down some lime and charged the master 5 shillings, and the smell of my box was as bad as ever. But that was not all. Standing as I did on a quantity of moist straw, my feet grew unhealthy and tender, and the master used to say, "I don't know what's the matter with this horse, but he goes very fumble-footed. I am sometimes afraid he will stumble." "Yes, sir," said Alfred. "I have noticed the same myself, when I've exercised him." Now the fact was, he hardly ever did exercise me, and when the master was busy I often stood for days without even stretching my legs at all, and being fed just as high as if I were at work. This often disordered my health, and made me sometimes heavy and dull, but more often restless and feverish. He never even gave me a meal of green meal or a bran mash, which would have cooled me, for he was altogether as ignorant as he was conceited. Instead of exercise or a change of food, I had to take horse balls and draughts, which, beside the nuisance of having them poured down my throat, used to make me feel ill and uncomfortable. One day my feet were so tender that, trotting over some fresh stones with my master on my back, I made 2 serious stumbles, that as he came down Lansdowne into the city, he stopped at the farrier's and asked him to see what was the matter with me. The man took up my feet one by one and examined them, and then standing up and dusting his hands one against the other, he said, "Your horse has got the thrush, and badly too. His feet are very tender. It is fortunate that he's not been down. I wonder your groom has not seen to it before. This is the sort of thing we find in foul stables, where the litter is not properly cleared out. If you will send him here tomorrow, I will attend to the hoof, and I will direct your man how to apply the liniment which I give him." The next day I had my feet thoroughly cleansed and stuffed with tow, soaked in some strong solution. A very unpleasant business it was. The farrier ordered all the litter to be taken out of my box day by day, and the floor kept very clean. Then I was to have bran mashers, a little green meal, and not so much corn, till my feet were well again. With this treatment I soon regained my spirits, but Mr. Barry was so much disgusted at being twice deceived by his grooms that he determined to give up keeping a horse, and to hire when he wanted one, and I was therefore kept till my feet were quite sound, and then was sold again. No doubt a horse fair is a very amusing place to those who have nothing to lose. At any rate, there is plenty to see. Long strings of young horses out of the country, fresh from the marshes, droves of shaggy little Welsh ponies no higher than Merrylegs, and hundreds of cart horses of all sorts, some of them with their long tails braided up and tied with scarlet cord, and a good many like myself, handsome and high-bred, but fallen into the middle class through some accident or blemish, unsoundness of wind, or some other complaint. There were some splendid animals, quite in their prime and fit for anything. They were throwing out their legs and showing off their paces in high style as they were trotted out with the leading rein, the groom running by the side. But round in the background there were a number of poor things, sadly broken down with hard work, with their knees buckling over and their hind legs swinging out at every step. And there were some very dejected-looking old horses, with the underlip hanging down and the ears lying back heavily, as if there were no more pleasure in life, no more hope, no more hope. There were some so thin you might see all their ribs, and some with old sores on their backs and hips. These were sad sights for a horse to look upon, who knows not but he may come to the same state. There was a great deal of bargaining, of running up and beating down, and if a horse may speak his mind so far as he understands, I should say that there were more lies told and more trickery at that horse fair than a clever man could give an account of. I was put with 2 or 3 other strong, useful-looking horses, and a good many people came to look at us. The gentlemen always turned from me when they saw my broken knees, though the man who had me swore it was only a slip in the stall. The first thing was to pull my mouth open, then to look at my eyes, then feel all the way down my legs, and give me a hard feel of the skin and flesh, and then try my paces. It was wonderful what a difference there was in the way things were done. Some did it with a rough, off-hand way, as if one were only a piece of wood, while others would take their hands gently over one's body with a pat now and then, as much as to say, by your leave. Of course I judged a good deal of the buyers by their manners to myself. There was one man, I thought, if he would buy me, I should be happy. He was not a gentleman, nor yet one of the loud, flashy sort that called themselves so. He was a rather small man, but well made and quick in all his motions. I knew in a moment by the way he handled me that he was used to horses. He spoke gently, and his grey eye had a kindly, cheery look in it. It may seem strange to say, but it is all the same true, that the clean, fresh smell that was about him made me take to him. No smell of old beer and tobacco, which I hated, but a fresh smell, as if he had come out of a hayloft. He offered £23 for me, but that was refused, and he walked away. I looked after him, but he was gone, and a very hard-looking, loud-voiced man came. I was dreadfully afraid he would have me, but he walked off. 1 or 2 more came, who did not mean business. Then the hard-faced man came back again and offered £23. A very close bargain was being driven, for my salesman began to think he should not get all he asked, and must come down. And just then the grey-eyed man came back again. I could not help reaching out my head toward him. He stroked my face kindly. "Well, old chap," he said, "I think we should suit each other. I'll give 24 for him." "I'll say 25, and you shall have him." 24.10, said my friend, in a very decided tone, "and not another 6 pence, yes or no." "Done," said the salesman, "and you may depend upon it, there's a monstrous deal of quality in that horse, and if you want him for cab work, he's a bargain." And the money was paid on the spot, and my new master took my halter and led me out of the fair to an inn, where he had a saddle and bridle ready. He gave me a good feed of oats and stood by while I ate it, talking to himself and talking to me. Half an hour after, we were on our way to London, through pleasant lanes and country roads, until we came into the great London thoroughfare, on which we travelled steadily, till in the twilight we reached the great city. The gas lights were already lighted. There were streets to the right and streets to the left, and streets crossing each other for mile upon mile. I thought we should never come to the end of them. At last, in passing through one, we came to a long cab stand, where my rider called out in a cheery voice,